It's time once again for another episode of Atlanta Legal Experts Radio, broadcasting live from the Pro Business Channel studios in Atlanta. And now, here's your host, Emily-Rowell.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting episode of Atlanta Legal Experts Radio. My name is Emily-Rowell. I am your host and I am with Peachtree Offices. And we have a full room this morning. I'm excited to announce I do have Rich-Casanova in the background. He is going to be doing some production and some social media this morning.
Yeah, a little less in the background this morning for this episode. We have some really cool widgets we've added to the studio at the Pro Business Channel studios here in Buckhead, and I'll be doing a lot of social media and some other cool stuff. And you also have joining us a co-host along on the show as well.
Yes, we have Craig Williams.
Yes,
Good
I'm
morning.
here. I'm here.
Thank you for being
Glad
here
to
and
be
helping
here.
me out today.
And
Most definitely, it's my pleasure.
Welcome back to the USA.
Thank you so
You were
much.
traveling abroad and just in time for ale.
Yes, I am. Just in time for ale.
And this morning I have Lloyd Thomas with Lloyd Thomas Law. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I have Ed Danowitz with Danowitz Legal.
Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you for being here. And Bruce Hagen, again, he's back.
Good morning. Good to
We
be
couldn't
back.
resist you.
I love the hat, too. You got to see this, folks. This hat is...
It's actually
it's
a
nice.
cap, not to get technical.
Oh,
Craig,
excuse
I've
me.
been corrected on that
Oh,
myself.
it's a cap.
But the nice
Gotcha.
thing is I picked out a colorful one because I knew we were going to be on radio today.
Outstanding.
For legal reasons, we have to call it a cap hat.
Exactly right. I don't want to get sued by the hat lobby now.
That's
And I would
another
love-
show.
Okay, this is going to be a good one today. And I would like to also say thank you to our sponsors. We have Atlanta's own John Marshall Law School. We have 3A Law Practice Management. And best for last, we have Peachtree Offices. And you can see all of the logos and links to their website on our website at atlantalegalexperts.com. You ready to go?
Yes, ma'am. I'm ready.
I am too.
Outstanding.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Lloyd. Thank you so much for being here. We
I'm
really
excited.
appreciate it. He has been an attorney in Atlanta since 1985. He graduated from Emory University School of Law and is a former Georgia Trial Lawyers Association champion member. For 25 years, Lloyd's law practice has been focused on automobile accidents. Lloyd often posts YouTube videos in which he offers practical advice about what to do following an auto accident and has insightful tips about which auto insurance coverage is the most important to buy. He has a very interesting video coming out soon called The 9 Mistakes People Often Make Following an Auto Accident. And his office is just across the street, right near our studio here in Buckhead. Welcome to Atlanta Legal Radio, Lloyd. And 9 whole mistakes.
Is it just 9? I've made about 3 or 4, I know, after an accident.
Well, we just tried to focus on the 9 basic ones that sometimes people make. But I don't want to, talk about those yet because they haven't even hit my website.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. But let's go ahead and get started. And tell me a little bit first how you got into law.
Well, I went to Emory undergraduate and wasn't sure what I wanted to do and found out there was a law school across the street. So I filled out an application and walked it over the day it was due, and they accepted me.
Pretty simple.
Not too glamorous. Didn't have any lawyers in my family or anything like that, but like to write and like to go ahead and go to graduate school is what I wanted to try and do. So I did, and started off. Really thought I was going to be a tax lawyer. Went to got a master's of tax degree at Georgia State, and started with a Big 8 accounting firm. And that didn't work out. I didn't want to prepare taxes, which is what they had me doing. So I went off and started with smaller firms. And after about 4 or 5 years, somebody walked a personal injury case into my office. And I made more money in 1 week doing that than I had in about the last 3 months doing other types of law. So I gravitated towards that and have been doing that for the last 25 years.
That explains it.
Yeah, that's pretty organic. I mean, I think that's the definition of an organic transition there.
Yes.
Well, I hadn't thought of myself as an organic lawyer. It was just kind of a necessity, but I'll adopt that title.
Yeah, you better register that.
The new all-natural lawyer.
There you go.
I'll put a recycling bin in the front of my office, and maybe I can go ahead and start selling that.
That would
Outstanding.
be awesome. So tell me, now what is the first thing someone should do if they've been involved in an accident?
I try to tell people how important it is to start gathering evidence, because that I know that I've been in a wreck, or at least recently my son was in a wreck. And I've been doing this for 25 years, and I got down there and I didn't do any of the things that I tell people to do. And I left afterwards. I thought, what a terrible dad and lawyer I am to go down to where my son had just run into somebody in the back, and I didn't take pictures, and I didn't talk to the police officers. Mm-hmm. So what I always tell people to do, and it's too late usually after I talk to them, but I would like them to take out their cell phones and take photographs of both vehicles if they can, and the location, so that captures it in case the police officer gets it wrong on the police report, or there's some issue that comes up, a controversy between the two drivers. The other thing that really goes before that is make sure you call the police. Sometimes people get involved in a wreck. They think, oh, we can take care of this. Everybody's very conciliatory, and the person that caused the wreck admits causing the wreck, and they trade information, they go their ways, and the next thing you know, my client's saying, he's totally changing his story to his insurance company. So I really think it's a good idea to get a police report. If for some reason you leave the scene and you don't get one, there are ways to go ahead and contact the police and fill out a supplemental report or your own report. And in some cases, you have to file a report in order to make a claim against your own insurance company. If there's personal injuries involved with an uninsured motorist case, and you fail to prepare a police report within 24 hours, you may waive your ability to go ahead and make a claim against your own company, which can also be quite distressing to someone who's been paying insurance premiums for many years to an insurance company, and then they're told, well, you didn't make the 24-hour deadline, you're out.
Wow, yeah. Well, it's true that they'll change their stories. I actually had that happen to me. I had a lady hit me, and luckily I had taken the pictures, so you're right. You definitely want to take pictures. I wasn't as thorough as I wanted. I afterwards realized I needed to be, but she had admitted fault at the scene, but then got home, and her husband changed the entire story. So when they tried to call her, he wouldn't answer the phone. He wouldn't return calls. He was saying, you're crazy. He finally did and said, you're crazy. My wife never did that. Luckily, I had the pictures to back it up.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Super frustrating. Yeah.
Well, and you can count on the insurance adjusters before they take the recorded statements to say that, after the person like that says, well, it was my fault, and they says, all right, well, I'm going to get this recording, but just so you know, if it's your fault, we're going to have to cancel you. But if it wasn't your fault, we'll stand behind you and fight you, and your rates will stay the same. So I'm going to turn the tape recorder on right now and ask you whose fault it was. Yeah. And suddenly things change dramatically.
Most definitely.
Wow.
I think a lot of times the insurance company is the one that helps change that story for, like you said.
It can be the insurance company. Also, a late arriving mom can do the same thing. I had that happen last week. A young man ran into my client. He changed lanes right into her. They got out of the car. He said, oh, I'm sorry I didn't see you. I changed lanes. She said, yeah, you changed lanes right into me. They were talking to the police officer. He said he changed lanes. His mom showed up. She talked to him for a little while. Next thing you know, he's saying, she changed lanes into me.
Yeah, the mother's influence. It's powerful, isn't it?
And
hopefully you didn't do that with your son.
No, I forgot to take pictures. I wasn't.
He was concerned about himself. He was really being a good dad. You were a little bit too hard on yourself earlier.
Yeah, your emotions took over.
I was just worried about how much our insurance rates were going to go up.
Oh, really? Oh, I was taken up for you for a minute.
Right. Greg's trying to bail you out here.
Yeah, I had the normal, financial consequences concerns that most parents have of 18-year-old boys. So
I remember all the accidents I had earlier, and I mean, all of us in here, pretty much, we didn't have the access to what we have now. And you don't usually have to tell people to take the phone out. That's probably usually the reason why we have some of the accidents that we have. But taking the phone out and camera, and as well as recording, having a conversation with them and having it on record. And that'd be great time to kind of get before the police get there, or if they decide to not have police involved, record that conversation. But
if you could go ahead and get that would be fantastic. I only think that in one instance can I remember anybody telling me that they had actually pinned down the at-fault party, as we call them, to admit liability, and it was actually a young woman attorney who got out of her car and walked over to the other driver and got right in his face and said, will you agree to stipulate to liability?
Yeah.
And I think he was still shocked. His airbags may have been in his face, and he said, I don't know. Yes, I guess I will.
And then go right into it. And then, I mean, maybe that's number 10, where you where you don't involve the police. Well, at least I got that. So, I think that could corroborate the story.
The police never showed up.
Wow.
It just
And
wasn't
that's another.
important to
There are a lot of potential roadblocks, so to speak. One, the police could take forever to show up. You're not sure about whether to move your cars or not. Another thing that happens a lot of times, which after you're done, a lot of people want to go or need to go to the emergency room, and they may wind up at Grady Hospital for 10 or 12 hours, and just the law of attrition, they just leave. They're like, as bad as I felt a little while ago, I just can't stay here all night.
Right.
That was my last accident. Literally, on Northside Drive. The police took way too long. I wound up at Grady, and that's pretty interesting. You were there.
Yeah,
So you do chase
I try not to
ambulances.
darken. I try not to darken the door of Grady too often, but I hear stories about it, and fortunately, I've been doing this for a long time. I've had thousands of clients, and oftentimes I will get a call from someone who has just been involved in a wreck, and that is ideal to be able to go ahead and assist them and give them kind of a laundry list of things to do. And one of them always is, if you're hurt, you should go to the hospital right now. It's really important to go ahead and seek immediate treatment, and also establish early on that this is significant and that I do need to go to a hospital and get treatment, versus waiting a few days to see if it goes over. But when they do go, sometimes I'll tell them, if you go, you may want to choose a hospital that's not as busy as, say, Grady or Atlanta Medical Center, and they can go to one of the other emergency rooms around and normally get seen a little bit more quickly.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about if you're injured, because I think we were kind of talking about minor fender benders. Well, in my minor fender bender, excuse me, I didn't think I was injured until the next day.
I think as soon as you realize you're injured or suspect that you're injured, you should go ahead and take the appropriate steps, whether that's going to see your family physician, going to an emergency room, or talking to friends, family members, an attorney about what they would recommend, and try to go ahead and get going on it. Time is the friend of the insurance companies. Any gap between the date of your accident and when you seek treatment can really deteriorate the quality of your case, and can allow them to raise what's called a causation argument, which is, well, you were involved in a wreck, you didn't complain at the scene, 2 weeks went by, then you started treating with a doctor. How do we know that the injuries that you treated for were actually caused by our wreck? Versus leaving the scene in an ambulance to the emergency room, you then establish a pretty clear causal connection between the wreck and your injuries.
Yeah, I think it is safe to just go on and go. I was a firefighter, and there were many times that was, if there were any signs of any type of injury, we would encourage, not tell them that's what they should do, but encourage them to at least go get seen after. But
sure, some people are really they're cost conscious. They may not have health insurance. They're worried. They also other times they don't want to leave their car. Maybe they're with their kids. There's reasons that they might not go in an ambulance.
Yes.
The other thing that happens is a lot of people are in shock or have this adrenaline rush right after a wreck, and they know they don't feel normal, but they're not sure they're hurt. And if you've ever taken a pratfall, let's say, for instance, you go ice skating and you fall down, like I did in New York last year. I fell down right on my wrist, and it didn't feel good, but I got right up because
that pride and ego just kicked right in.
It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing.
Yeah.
Pride, ego, the former athlete who is now, trying to dust off his pants. You don't want to, you either don't realize you're hurt or you don't want to call attention to yourself.
Yeah.
And so very often, police officers handle an awful lot of stuff, and they do the best job they can. But sometimes, they'll ask you, do you want an ambulance? And you say no. They'll write down on the report, not injured, when you may very well feel badly, but there's reasons that you don't want to take an ambulance.
Most definitely.
So it is, it's important to go and to be seen as soon as possible. And whenever my clients call me, I always ask them, the first question I ask, are you hurt? Are you injured? Because that's what I am. I'm a personal injury lawyer. Sometimes people call me and just ask me about their property damage, and I will assist them in that. But I say, what I do is handle cases for people that are hurt. And it doesn't necessarily, there's no direct relationship between the amount of property damage to your car and the fact that you could be hurt. I've seen, pretty significant injuries where people had virtually no damage to their car. And I've seen just completely catastrophic looking vehicles where people walked away with hardly any problems, or at least some of the people in the vehicle did. Yeah. It really comes down to, the personal feeling and how you are immediately afterwards, as soon as the adrenaline goes away or as soon as they start sinking in. For instance, Emily, you said you were involved in a wreck. You didn't know you were hurt, and then you started feeling it. That's not unusual. And so for insurance companies to go ahead and take the byline, well, if you didn't complain at the scene, then you couldn't have been hurt. It's just really rhetoric. It's not something which is supportable. And although they want to try to go ahead and bring that up, especially in trials of the cases, the best way to go ahead and defeat that is just as soon as you do realize it, is go and get treatment. One of the problems that we face oftentimes is insurance companies follow up really quickly.
They ask you to call them too.
They ask you to call them. They call you, and oftentimes within the first day or so, they'll start talking, and they always want to get a statement. I try to tell my clients, don't give them a recorded statement if you can help it. But you have to balance it between reporting it and wanting to get them to fix your car, and also them asking you about your injuries. Right. But very often, within a day or two, the client will say, no, I'm not hurt, or I think I'm okay. And they treat that as though it's an ironclad excuse to not have to pay the claim later on.
Well, it came out of your mouth, so that's something that they have to work against you. Yeah.
So you just got to keep quiet and
No, you have to hire a lawyer like me. He says,
yeah, I mean, I know it's coming soon, but on the first 9 that he's going to have up on his website, number 1 through 3 is call your lawyer, call your lawyer, call your lawyer. Then you call an ambulance because,
You said that 3 times. That was
yeah,
good.
like I said.
Yeah. One of those mistakes must be thinking that one call is all you're going to need here. So.
Yes, kind of heard that before. One call. Yeah, you're right.
We won't say anymore.
Not my slogan, but we all know that one.
So can you give us a hint of any of those 9? Can you give us one?
Well, I think we've already gone through them. For instance, all right, here's one, that when you go to the emergency room, I tell people to start at the top of their head and go all the way down to their toes. Describe everything that they have going wrong. Sometimes people will go in and they'll just focus on whatever the biggest problem is or the thing they're most worried about. It might be their neck. It could be where the seatbelt gripped them and they're complaining about their ribs. Mm-hmm. They might have, if it's a frontal impact, their knee may have hit the dashboard, and so their knee's hurting them. But if they only have the one complaint that they're focusing on at the hospital, for instance, the knee, and then the next day, after they leave the hospital, after the adrenaline goes down, they start feeling their neck pain, maybe some shoulder pain, lower back. Then when they go to a doctor a few days later and they complain of all that, and oftentimes it's a chiropractor, what happens with the insurance company? Oh, you're exaggerating, you're embellishing. All you complained of at the emergency room was your knee, and now you've got neck and shoulder. I mean, come on, folks, is the way they try to portray it. And, and so I would like people to go ahead and try to be really thorough when they go into the emergency room or they first go to their PCP, to try to go ahead and describe everything that they are feeling all throughout their body. It helps later on because you avoid the discrepancies that come up between medical records.
When it comes to health care, unfortunately, I think that's what's overbearing all of us. If we're not used to going, because I was a runner, and I would go to the chiropractor as part of my maintenance. That was part of a lifestyle, And so when I had an accident, I went to Grady because they were the closest. But the next visit was my chiropractor, especially since I knew I had to get on a plane for 20-some-odd hours to go to Australia a couple of weeks from there. Sure. So I was going, but I knew there had to be some adjusting. But that, I mean, like you're saying, that a lot of it is because if you know an accident's about to happen, we're bracing, the physiological
that's a good point.
Reaction. A lot of the injury is that. So you have to focus. I love the head to toe. That's powerful right there to really, because the doctor, the police, they're wanting to get those points of injury in the report right away. You're not a doctor. You're not really considering yourself for the most part. You're thinking about the car and
I guess
and
you
all
could
that.
think of it as I want people to take a picture of their vehicles. I'd also like them to go ahead and paint a full picture of their injuries.
There you go. There you
I
go.
love that. We're going to end with that. And I think you really did give us some great advice today. And we look forward to seeing your video on your website. So if you'll tell our listeners what the website is and how they can reach you, that would be wonderful.
It's LloydThomasLaw.com, which is pretty easy to remember if you can remember my name, LloydThomasLaw.com. And I have Facebook page and also a Twitter account, although I'm still kind of getting up to speed on those. But LloydThomasLaw.com, and we have videos and
YouTube.
other helpfuls.
YouTube.
YouTube also.
Oh, yeah.
There he is.
And my phone number is 404-848-8898. So thanks very much for having me, Emily.
Absolutely. Thank you. And now you've been on Atlanta Legal Experts Radio, and we're excited.
Can't wait to be back.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks again, listeners, for tuning in this morning on their computers.
Or what have you.
Or what have you.
Yeah.
Your smartphones, whatever it is. And thank you to our sponsors this morning, 3A Law Practice Management, Atlanta's own John Marshall Law School, and Peachtree Offices. And we're going to continue this interview with Ed Danowitz. Thank you for being so quiet this morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Now you
I
get
was
to
learning a
talk.
lot from Lloyd.
Yes, absolutely. So, Ed, we're going to go ahead and start with your bio. He established his firm, Danowitz Legal, in 1993. For more than 2 decades, he has remained committed to representing businesses and business owners with corporate concerns, commercial transactions, non-bankruptcy workouts, reorganizations, bankruptcies, and related matters. He has successfully tried cases in state and federal courts and has appealed judgments to the U.S. Court of Appeals, to the Georgia Courts of Appeal, and the Georgia Supreme Court. He has served as lead counsel in the successful reorganization of a variety of businesses in Chapter 11. He is a member of the State Bar of Georgia and the Florida Bar. In addition to state courts of Georgia and Florida, he is admitted to practice in U.S. District Courts, Courts of Appeal, and the United States Supreme Court. And you earned your law degree from Emory
I
in
was
88.
3 years behind Lloyd. I finished in 88.
And how'd you get started?
Well,
Lloyd.
Lloyd.
Wasn't it Lloyd?
no, Lloyd did not impress me in 1985, but I took 10 years out of college before I started law school, and I was a public servant working for the equivalent of DFACS in Florida, Health and HRS. And I was taking kids out of abusive homes, and I was going to court all the time, dealing with lawyers who were, for the most part, very impressive and very ethical, and some of whom I thought had no business practicing law. It gave me the impression that if they can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And I had needed a change in my life. I had just gotten divorced and decided to go to law school. And I applied to a number of schools, and when Emory accepted me, I jumped at that opportunity because it's widely known. The other schools were all good schools, but Emory I thought would open more doors for me. Whether I wanted to go back to Florida, move to Washington, or New York. However, my wife and I had children, and we just fell in love with Atlanta, and we've been here since 1985.
Nice. So tell me, what areas of law, I kind of named some of the business, so what do you focus on if you could be more detailed?
In terms of business law, we do a lot of, I represent several privately held companies, and we do things from buy-sell agreements when they're acquiring small acquisitions to non-compete agreements, and I've got to file a lawsuit this week because one of our former employees has violated his non-compete agreement. So we'll be in court on that matter before too long. In terms of reorganizations, that's really where the bread and butter is. We've excelled in small business reorganizations, entrepreneurs. A lot of individuals have filed Chapter 11 to keep their assets, and we've managed very successfully with the individual Chapter 11 cases in the last 10 years.
Now, how did you fall into this area of law?
Well, bankruptcy was because I had the greatest mentor in the world when I was at Emory University, Dean David Epstein, who wrote all the books on bankruptcy, inspired me and encouraged me to apply to a bankruptcy boutique right out of law school, and I cut my teeth on bankruptcy before founding my own firm a few years later.
Gotcha. And the whole corporate side of it is something.
It's so related, so interrelated, because a lot of people come to me with the impression that they need to file Chapter 11, and we say, whoa, let's look at what the options are, because Chapter 11 is a very deep pit, and once you get into it, you may not come out of it. So let's look at what we can do before we go there. And so a lot of times it involves litigation or non-litigation, just working out things with creditors.
Sure. Now, when you say reorganization, can you describe that a little bit more? Explain that a little more?
All right. So you or your business, maybe you've been sued and there's a judgment against you. Maybe there's a tax lien and the IRS is about to seize your assets, close your doors. If you file a Chapter 11 reorganization, which is a bankruptcy, make no mistake, it is a bankruptcy. But the moment you file that, all creditors are prohibited from trying to collect against you. So you have that breathing room to try to work something out. In the bankruptcy court, you have certain laws you have to follow in order to get a plan confirmed, but the IRS always gets paid 100% of their priority claims. So it's a matter of taking care of your taxes, which helps to pay for what our government's doing, and paying other creditors something. They may not get anything if you close your doors, but in Chapter 11 they will get something. That's assured. So we're doing what we think is in the best interest of the community.
Gotcha. That's really, really interesting. Now tell me, what makes you stand out amongst other attorneys?
Well, like I said, we have this niche among small businesses, whether it's litigation or whether it's reorganization. We do the same things that some of the larger firms do, but our fees are significantly less. Our retainers are significantly less. And so we have the hands-on ability. Right now I have one associate. Sometimes I have two or more associates, but right now I have one associate. They come to our firm, they're going to be dealing with me or with Karen, period. They're not going to have to figure out who's going to answer the phone when they have a question, because they'll be dealing with one of the two of us. So we have the hands-on capability. They know the lawyers they're dealing with, and there's no surprises when they appear in court or at deposition.
I like that. That's what we promise for our clients as well, because we're family-owned and operated, as opposed to the big conglomerate that is out there that we won't talk about. So we're here, the owner's there. You're always going to have somebody there for you when you need it. You're not going to need to call an 800 number or be put on hold for too long to get your issue settled or to get something that you need or whatnot. So
exactly.
It's another organic story. I think you all might need to. I'm serious. I mean, when it comes to attorneys, you usually have people who always wanted. I wanted to be an attorney at one time, and I worked at Powell Goldstein, Frazier and Murphy back in the late '80s, and it was that trajectory that I was on. And there was a lot of planning in my mind. And to hear both of your stories, Lloyd's and yours, your story, as far as how you got into it, there was a story behind it. Definitely a lot of us need to look for that story of why we're not chasing our passions. It sounds like you created that same story there.
Well, when I told my father I was going to law school when I was 33 years old, he was a military officer, career man, and he questioned my sanity. 20 years later, he was so proud of what I was doing
Most
that
definitely.
it was just an amazing turnabout.
And I'd have to say that's what keeps you motivated on your day-to-day, pretty much. One of the things, right, outside of your father.
Well,
right?
I'll say that in my line of work, I'm never bored with what I do. I'm sometimes very frustrated, go home and I want to kick the dog, but I don't. But it's never a boring day. In my previous professions, before I went to law school, I was bored to tears some days. And so I find that it's mentally stimulating every day of my life.
That's healthy.
yeah.
And it's organic. and this content is evergreen, you folks.
I
so
think I know the title of the show
Hey.
on my website.
I'm also no GMOs and farm to table.
most definitely.
This is our organic show.
So speaking of markets, how do you continue to nurture that soil and grow the business going forward?
I have a lot of associations with accountants, with tax lawyers, and the accountants know when their clients are in trouble. And the accountants are my very good friends, and they get very nice Christmas presents from me. And so that's what the bread and butter has been for many years. Now I have a more active website than I had in previous years, and I'm starting to get some response off the Internet. But traditionally, I was not an Internet marketing guru, and I relied on the old handshake and personal referral.
So I'd assume that bread is gluten-free and that butter is...
Sometimes it's high calorie. Sometimes it's got saturated fats.
Outstanding.
On top, yeah. Well, wonderful. Now, we talked a little bit about what keeps you motivated. What do you do when you're not practicing law? What's something that,
Well,
besides riding a bike? No, I'm just kidding. Which,
no,
little
the bike I
preview
ride
for-
is a Harley Davidson. Actually, my wife and I tour the country every chance we can.
Wow.
Oh,
We've
that's
gone coast to
wonderful.
coast to Canada.
And I was just guessing. Look at that.
That's my idea of a good time. And when I'm local, I play golf. I'm active with the Men's Golf Association at Indian Hills Country Club, and we spend a lot of time on Saturdays riding motorcycles and on Sundays playing golf.
Laid back. That's nice. That's nice. Did you make it to the Texas? They had like 100 and some odd thousand Harley Davidson riders down there just recently for some.
No, the rallies are really not my strength. I went to Sturgis once, which is the granddaddy of all rallies, and I've been there, done that. I'm in no hurry to return.
Gotcha. So you and the wife, you create your own rally. I gotcha.
Right. And with the motorcycle, I have joined the Patriot Guard Riders, which you might be familiar with.
Yes.
And we escort military and first responders to their final resting place when the families ask us to.
Yeah.
We never impose upon them, but if the families invite us, we show up in our full colors.
Well, and we thank you. We thank you for that.
Tell me two more things. I have two more questions for you. The first is, what do you tell a new law student just entering law school? What's a bit of advice to give them?
Two pieces, really. Avoid excessive student loans. If that means going to a state law school rather than a private law school, so be it. If it means working your way through law school, that's great, but avoid the excessive student loans because that will cause you undue hardship for many years, paying back an extra house mortgage for the next 15 years. If you don't land that silk stocking law firm knocking down six figures, you're going to be in pain. The other thing is follow your passions. Find out what you want to do. I went to law school with my background in DFACS, essentially, thinking that domestic relations would be my niche. I never even seriously considered that once I took the law school courses. And I found professors that showed me some interesting areas of law, and I pursued that. So follow the area of law that you think is going to be interesting. A lot of people change their mind after 5 or 10 years, and you can do that.
Right.
But go where you want to go. Do what you want to do.
Could I chime in here just for a second? Because
Sure.
Ed's path reminds me of one thing that I've told many prospective law students, and that is, why don't you take a few years, get a real job, learn what it's like to have to get up, go to do something that you may not want to do every day when you don't feel so great. Then after that, go to law school. The most successful students at Emory when I was there were people that had worked, that had been in the workforce, and that came in and they treated law school like a job instead of just a continuation of college.
That's so good.
That's a good point because when you're 30-plus years old and you start law school, failure is not an option. If you're 22 or 23 and you don't like it, you can go to something else. But you've etched your future in stone when you're over 30 and you
had
start
been
law school.
punching that clock
Yeah.
beforehand, and then you came in, and I'm sure you looked at it as a way to go ahead and better yourself, not just continue your education.
Exactly.
Right. And no doubt, even beyond that, just the guys who had spent a few years in the real world had some experience to draw on, even things like writing a check. You know, you're taking a commercial paper class.
Yeah.
It's like, what is it? I don't know what that is. You know, my
Wow.
mom sends me
Yeah.
something, and that's that. You know, it's like if you've had to live on your own and take care of things, you have a much better understanding of how this stuff works and how it fits in when you're in law school. So I always found that the guys who either had worked and come back to school or were working while they were in school had a lot more to offer in the class discussions than the idiots like me who just went straight from college through because we wanted to delay being a real person for 3 more years.
Oh, that's what it was.
Well, that's so true, though. So you wait and you work, and then if you're working, then you're saving up anyway, and then you don't have
right.
to have as many loans. Well, thank you so much for your expertise.
Thank you for the poignant questions.
Absolutely. And if you'll just let our listeners know how they can reach you.
Yes, my website is danowitzlegal.com, and you can call me anytime at 770-933-0960.
That's anytime, folks. Anytime.
Anytime.
You can call him right now, actually, if you'd like.
He won't answer.
Someone will answer. It won't be me right now.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks again. So we are going to just go straight on to Bruce Hagen. I'm so glad you're back.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be back.
Yes, with Hagen Law, and he is one of the top personal injury trial lawyers, say that 5 times fast, in the state of Georgia. He handles all manner of personal injury claims, but has particular emphasis on representing people who are injured while riding bicycles. And I have so many questions for you, so get ready.
I have so many answers for you, I hope.
Good. Bruce, he has handled thousands of personal injury cases and tried over 200 trials. He's been selected by his peers 11 consecutive years as Georgia super lawyer. Now, when it comes to handling case for people who ride bikes, Bruce has a particular expertise. He is an experienced cyclist himself. We can tell by the hat, and spends
It's a cap.
countless.
It's a cap.
Thank you. We're all learning something here
The
today.
cap.
I
The
don't want to be
cap.
sued. Okay. Spends countless hours supporting advocacy efforts to make cycling safer in the state of Georgia. He's a major supporter of groups such as the Atlanta Bicycling Coalition and Georgia Bikes, the two biggest advocacy groups in the state. Bruce and his partner are well known among the community of cyclists in the Atlanta area and frequently speak to both riding groups and law enforcement about the rights and responsibilities of bicyclists. He is the only lawyer in the state of Georgia who is part of Bike Law National Network of Bicycle Attorneys and Advocates. All right.
I made it tough for you.
So tell me, I love this question, this first question. I couldn't wait to ask. It is so annoying driving my car down the road, and the guy on the bike is on the road, and I have to go around him. Why isn't he on the sidewalk?
Yes, I know. That's got to be a horrible feeling for you because it probably delays you, maybe 30 seconds out of your life
Exactly.
to have to deal with this person who is so horribly rude as to think that they actually belong with their bicycle in the road when, here you are in your car. Get out of the way.
Yes.
So actually, this one
terrible
question could take
driver.
up the remainder of time that we have for the show. But short answer, bicycles aren't allowed on the sidewalk. For somebody who is under 12 years old, they're allowed to be on the sidewalk. Anybody over 12 is supposed to be in the street. And the streets are not for cars. The streets are for everybody. Bicycles as well. So, yes, bicycles have every right to be on the road. Motorists in cars have a responsibility to leave at least 3 feet between themselves and a bicycle when they're passing. A bike anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country really, but interstate highways, has the complete and absolute right to take up the entire lane if that's what's necessary to ride safely. The law in Georgia says that they should move over as far to the right of the lane as is practicable.
Okay.
It doesn't really define what that is, but it's practicable. So, it's annoying at times. We all need to just sit back, take a deep breath, and in fact, it will be less annoying if more people were riding bikes. So that's the answer,
That's a
Emily.
good point.
You should be a bicycle commuter. I think there's still hope for you.
And then you wouldn't have been mad at me when I was in front of you that time. Yeah.
That's right.
Because I,
mean,
too, am a cyclist.
Yes.
Oh, gosh. They're ganging up against me
A
now.
person on a bicycle. It's interesting, the terminology we use. I couldn't help but notice. Lloyd and I will never refer to an incident where a person is injured due to someone else's negligence as an accident. An accident is a kid knocking over a glass of milk at the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crash. It's a wreck, something like that. But you both were describing what happened to you as, I was in an accident, I had an accident. So it's kind of funny, but one by one, we'll change the vernacular.
But when it's our fault, we call it an accident.
We call it somebody else's fault.
Oh, of course.
Okay, so tell me, wouldn't it help traffic flow better if we had more facilities for bicycles, such as bike lanes or protected lanes?
Well, that's a great question, Emily. Actually, that is a big deal right now, and there's a hot debate going on in Buckhead over should Peachtree Street be redone with something to make it easier for bicycles to ride, such as a bike lane. They are making some revisions to Peachtree, and Peachtree in the area of Buckhead, including a center turn lane. But there was a major debate taking place at a city council hearing.
Yeah, just recently
over this. And, it's unfortunate because I think the prevailing view is we just need cars to move faster on Peachtree Street. And I couldn't feel that that's so wrong for our city.
Yeah.
You need Peachtree Street to be a livable space where people can walk, people can ride, people can come out and enjoy it and not just use it as this conduit to go faster and faster down
That's
the
true.
street.
And it's so busy on
Yeah.
that street,
And-
and we don't want that.
And a perfect example is Ponce de Leon in the area near Ponce City Market was redone a couple years ago. They put in center turn lane, but they put in bike lanes in either direction. The number of crashes on Ponce de Leon has gone down significantly. The volume of cars moving through that street has gone up significantly. They're moving faster and easier because the bicycles have a place to be out of the way of cars and vice versa. And so it just actually helps flow. It's much safer, and it makes Ponce more enjoyable when you can actually ride or walk and not feel like you're putting yourself in the path of folks who that 30 seconds that it's going to delay them is worth more to them than your life is worth to you.
Be careful. I'm the one asking you the
Look,
question.
Emily, I understand this, and I spoke to a group at the Georgia Bike Summit in Milledgeville a couple weekends ago, and I said, look, I hope this doesn't offend anybody out here, at a group of 200 or so people, but there's nothing more dangerous on the road than a carpool mom who's running 45 seconds late. Yeah. I said, just get out of the way.
He has got me
Well,
pegged.
I have been married to one of those for 28 years. So
Yes. So we see a lot, too, people riding bikes together in large groups. What rules apply to them?
Yeah, so, I explain this to bicycle groups when I speak to them, too, that we all want the protection that the law provides, but that comes with some responsibility. And that means if you want to be protected, you have to follow the rules. You can't just choose which rules you want to apply to you and which ones you don't. And this tends to be the source of a lot of animosity that the public has towards people who ride bikes is that, hey, they ride, in a group of 50 people and 5 across and they run through every stop sign. And, I don't blame folks for getting aggravated about that because the reality is it's legal to ride 2 across in a lane, but no more than 2. So if you're riding 3, 4, 5 across, now you're breaking the law. While I believe that the smarter rule in our state would be what we use in other states like Idaho, that every stop sign should be treated as a yield sign for bikes, that's just not the law. And so you have to stop. And so when you're running stop signs, you're running lights, and that is common in group rides, you're breaking the law every time. And so I spoke to a group of police officers recently in Milton, and that was kind of an interesting story how that came back. But City of Milton, we helped to train their police staff, and that was a big problem that they had was, one guy will go to the stop sign, he'll put his bike right in the flow of traffic, and let the next 50 or so members of the group kind of plow through.
Oh, no.
And the cop's saying, what should I do? And I say, well, it sounds like you better break out your pen because you're going to have to write a lot of tickets.
Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I've seen motorcyclists do the same thing as well.
Yeah.
in some form.
I have another question on that.
Well, these
one.
badass motorcycle gangs like Danowitz's gang.
Yeah.
We are so bad.
No, it's funny. We were down in near Daytona during Bike Week this year for spring break, and people have this image of the motorcycle riders and how tough they are and all this, and it was the friendliest, nicest group of folks that were. There wasn't one person there that was younger than me, and I'm not young, but it's just people out who love being on their bikes and riding, and I loved it. It was great.
The motorcycle thing, when they don't follow the rules, that irks me too. I mean, when they ride in between lanes.
Well, here's what happens.
I know that I would be doing that if I had
Emily,
one.
Here's what I would say.
appreciate
In
the
some states
transparency
that's
there.
permitted, though. Let me
Yes.
just say,
It
in
is.
some
Yeah.
states
It
that's
is.
permitted.
Yeah, in
The
California.
California
Yeah.
allows it, and that's a
Right.
big debate. Should it be? I say no, absolutely not.
So
it's totally
dangerous.
unsafe.
Yeah.
I try a lot of cases, and I try them on behalf of anybody who's injured in a wreck and can't get justice. We try the cases, and so that includes a lot of bike wreck cases and motorcycle wreck cases. And so here's what happens: you start questioning people on a jury. If they have seen somebody in a car cut them off, right?
Mm-hmm.
They think that driver's a jerk. If they see somebody on a bike doing something wrong, they think everybody who rides a bike is a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? And it's the same thing with motorcycles, right? If a car does something, that's fine. But one motorcycle, zooming in and out of traffic on 400
Well, I
at
see
80 miles
10
an hour.
of them.
Or 10 of them. But they just assume that everybody on a motorcycle
Yeah.
is like that. And there's
Right.
just a lot to overcome in terms of people's preconceived notions here about people on bikes, anything on 2 wheels, let's say. They just hate it. And I think part of it, too, is just a certain degree of envy over the freedom that you have when you're on a motorcycle
Yeah.
or on a bicycle.
Sure. That's probably a good
folks
point.
hate that.
Yeah.
I think it's very valid. And also, I like the fact that you are raising the consciousness by using the proper words so that because crash, and that's the thing we all have, the consciousness about bikers, the consciousness, because we don't
About
see it.
accidents.
Yeah,
Well-
and mistakes and accidents. That's another show right there.
We've seen this. And look, there's an entire industry out there that's the insurance industry dedicated to not treating people fairly and trying to make money by their underwriting, but also their, I think, unethical claims practices.
Most definitely.
And they've created a dialogue here and a nomenclature. And when you control the things the names that you use and the words that you use, it makes a difference. We see this in politics all the time. And, if you're not pro-life, what are you? You're pro-death. Okay?
Exactly.
So, controlling the terms that we use is a powerful
Perception
thing.
and reality, yeah.
So we're going to take that back.
Well, I'm right behind you. I'm right behind you.
Craig, I have a
Thanks,
question for you. So, have you ever been injured on your bike? By a car wreck
To my
or-
own, I've been injured in a car, but on a bike, if I was injured, it was because my shoes got locked in and I was trying to stand or trying to do. I mean, yeah. And I stay on
was
the.
your only
That's what.
fault.
Yeah, it was my only fault.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on the belt line. Which I'm a big fan of the belt line.
Yeah,
And-
Beltline is great.
Yeah,
But the whole concept of the mixed use trails like the Beltline is great. The Beltline is becoming a victim of its own success, and you go down there on any given weekend, and it's just great. But you can go out and enjoy a nice casual bike ride. If you're out there and you're putting on the spandex and you think you're going to be doing a time trial on the Beltline on a Saturday afternoon, you're being an irresponsible person
and you
too.
need to take that out to Rockdale or some of the
Right,
not
right.
the more congested areas like
Get
inside
out.
the city. That's not really the place for that unless it's 2:00 in the morning and then it's too late because it's 2:00 in the morning.
Right.
Yeah. So
but yeah, the Silver Comet Trail is a great opportunity for that, or head out to Stone Mountain Park. There's
Most
lots of
definitely.
places where you can do that and be away from cars.
it's being considerate. I mean, and it's the same thing on our roads and our cars as we have to be on our bikes or motorcycles, no matter what it is. It's being considerate. And the society we're in does not really, kind of nurture that mentality. It's all about me and where I got to be.
Especially in
you know.
Atlanta.
Well, it's 100% true. And even on the Beltline, I mean, people will walk 6 across,
Yeah.
right? Which is not very considerate. Or they'll have their dog on a retractable leash that's running the entire length
Right.
or width of the Beltline. It's
Most
only,
definitely.
I think, 14 feet across on the Beltline.
But you see it
Trail.
everywhere. You go to the airport, people are walking down the middle, or most people are walking to the right, and then you see that person just
You're like,
coming.
look at this jerk.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Just kidding.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's
if
just
he
consideration.
was injured by a car on his bike, what would he do? Does he have any rights?
Well, yes, you have the same rights as anybody would have. And if you're
Okay.
injured because of somebody else's negligence, then certainly you've got the same rights as anybody would have. Lloyd brought up some really good points about sort of the 9 most common mistakes. There's a lot to think about and a lot to do, and it's hard for people to know right off the bat, whether it's a car wreck, bike wreck, anything. I developed an app, the Bruce Hagen app, that is just kind of intended to have with you sort of on your phone that if you need it, you've got everything right there. And it includes a voice recorder so you can take those statements right at the scene.
Brilliant.
You can send pictures from the scene. You can there's a checklist of things to do right immediately. And it's stuff that if you ever sat down to think about it rationally, you would think about most of it. But if you didn't, and certainly in the heat of the moment, right, you're hurt, you're upset, your adrenaline's flowing, it's hard to think this through. So keep it in one place. And, thanks to, I think, this show, we're going to get that app on the phones of 4 million people here in Atlanta.
Yeah. And I know it's one of the 9 things that Lloyd.
It's one of the 9 things.
It's got to be one of
on
them.
Lloyd's list. Number 8 is
Download the app
downloading
before
the
you
Bruce
get in the car.
Hagen app.
Or not.
or not. But
Bruce, have you had much success trying to get some of the local or national insurance companies to adopt your app and actually offer that to their insureds?
I'm working on that still.
I can help you with that after the
Good,
show
good.
for
So,
sure.
but it's look, there's a lot to think about when these things happen, and to some extent, it's too late if you're only thinking about it at first. And you talk about insurance, you can protect yourself by getting the right kinds of insurance, particularly things like uninsured motorist coverage in as much as high as amount as you can afford to get, and medical payments coverage. And yet, if you think of that only for the first time after you've been injured, it's too late to help you in that instance. The interesting thing is that the uninsured motorist coverage and medical payments coverage on your auto policy will still protect you if you're injured while you're out on your bike.
Oh, wow.
So it's really a valuable thing to have, and
That's
we
good to
talk to bike groups about having that. The challenge we have with some folks is that they enjoy riding their bikes so much that they've just given up driving a car, and so they don't have a car.
The insurance. Yeah.
There are some bicycle-only policies out there, but none of them are really very
As
effective.
thorough,
Comprehensive,
So
yeah.
that's an area where the market's changing a little bit.
So tell me, what resources do you have for bicycle owners that where could you point them to go?
Well, certainly they can get a lot of information from our website, which is just bikelaw.com. Bike Law is a national group, and there is a ton of information there from the bike law lawyers around the country. We all face common issues in the different states, even though state laws may be slightly different. But a ton of information there, blog posts from some really good writers around the country. And then the Georgia page within there is my specific page. The website for my office is hagen-law.com, and we've got information there. It's Hagen, in case you're wondering, with a hyphen, hate that hyphen. But it's Hagen-law.com.
Is your second marriage, is that one?
Yeah, that's right. It's a good one. Yes, and then I know you talked about 800 numbers, but I do have one. 800-I-AM-HURT is one way to reach me. 404-522-7553 is another. Bruce at BikeLaw.com is
He's
the easiest
everywhere,
way to email
folks.
me. If you can't find me, you're really not trying.
Coming to a screen near you.
I'm on Atlanta Eats Radio, Atlanta Eats TV,
That's right,
talking about
yes.
food periodically.
Shapiro, yeah.
With our boy Steak, and then 680
That's
to talk about sports. So I'm all over the place. That's why you don't ask me the question of what do you do other than practice law, because, I mean, what do I do in my spare time? I'm a lawyer.
Right. Well, thank you, and thank you for pegging me, and I will be more understanding of the bicyclists out on the roads, and I am very courteous. I just get that internal
Emily, I couldn't imagine you being anything other than courteous.
So thanks so much. Did you?
The only question I had was what's your connection with Emory University?
When I first started out working at a law firm, I would leave the firm to go to the Emory Law Library just to do a little research and have some quiet time after lunch where nobody could find me. That's about my only connection to
Well,
Emory
we're complete
University.
now because I've got one off the air that I'll share. But Emily?
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, this was a great show. Lots of really good information for everybody. And we, again, thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsors. Without you, we couldn't make the show possible. And look forward to next week. This is Emily Rowell with Peachtree Offices signing out.
Thank you again for joining Emily Rowell and her guests on the Pro Business Channel. Use the social media links here to share today's show and stay tuned for the next episode of Atlanta Legal Experts Radio.